Florida, the Sunshine State. A paradise of palm trees, warm beaches, and theme park magic. It's a place of retirement dreams and family vacations. But beneath the surface of this sunny facade lies a state steeped in shadows. A land of ancient swamps that hide terrible secrets, and glamorous hotels built on foundations of scandal and death. Florida has a dark, wet underbelly, and the things that fester there do not always stay there. Tonight, we pull back the curtain of sunshine. We are counting down the top 12 most haunted places in Florida. From the ghostly residents of historic inns to the unspeakable things that stir in the murky waters of the Everglades. But be warned. The stories you are about to hear are soaked in the state's humid, heavy air. They are tales of documented tragedy and first-hand terror that prove in Florida, the past doesn't just fade away, it rises from the swamp. 1. The St. Augustine Lighthouse. A beautiful, striped beacon guiding ships away from Florida's treacherous coast, and a tower that holds the trapped, terrified spirits of 3 little girls who met a tragic end. The history is a heartbreak. In 1873, the lighthouse keeper was painting the tower when the cart carrying his 3 young daughters, Hezekiah, Mary, and Eliza, broke loose. The girls plunged to their deaths on the concrete below. Their playful spirits are said to have remained forever bound to the place of their sudden passing. The paranormal encounter here is one of sorrow and playful malice. Visitors and staff report the sound of children's laughter and running footsteps echoing in the keeper's house. The scent of fresh oranges, the girls' favorite snack, appears and vanishes. But the lighthouse tower itself is a vortex of activity. People feel small, unseen hands pushing them, tugging at their clothes, and hear tiny, whispering voices begging them to stay and play. The climactic story was captured by a paranormal investigation team. While locked in the lighthouse tower overnight, they set up a recorder at the top. In the dead of night, they clearly captured the sound of 3 distinct, young girls giggling, followed by the horrifying, screeching sound of metal on metal, the exact sound the cart would have made, and then, a series of 3, soft, sickening thuds on the ground far below. The investigators refused to finish their night. The St. Augustine Lighthouse is a beautiful sentinel standing guard over a timeless tragedy, where the ghosts of children are forever at play, and forever falling. 2. The Biltmore Hotel, Coral Gables. A majestic, Mediterranean revival palace of luxury and golf, that served as a hospital during World War II, where the ghost of a notorious mobster still holds court and the spirits of dead soldiers wander the halls. The history is one of glamour and gangsters. In the 1920s, it was a playground for the rich and famous, including gangster Thomas "Fatty" Walsh, who was murdered in a hit on the grounds. During the war, it was converted into a massive military hospital, where countless soldiers died from their wounds. The paranormal encounter is a mix of the suave and the sorrowful. The spirit of Fatty Walsh is often seen in the grand lobby and by the pool, dressed in a stylish white suit, still exuding a dangerous charm. But the hotel's upper floors, once hospital wards, are a different story. The sound of phantom gurney wheels and the smell of antiseptic fill empty corridors. Apparitions of confused soldiers in hospital robes are seen looking out windows, forever waiting for a discharge that will never come. The climactic story is famous among staff. A night manager, making his rounds, got into an elevator alone. The doors closed, and the elevator ascended, but when they opened, he was not on a guest floor, but in a long, sterile-looking hallway that smelled of iodine. A man in a 1940s army uniform walked past the elevator doors, turned, and gave him a sad smile before the doors closed again. The elevator then returned to the lobby, functioning normally. The Biltmore Hotel is a place where the glamour of the jazz age and the grim reality of war exist in a permanent, ghostly stalemate. 3. Robert the Doll, Key West. Not a place, but a presence contained within one, a simple, two-story house in Old Town that holds the most feared object in all of Florida, a 3-foot-tall straw doll with a terrifying, sentient rage. The history begins in the early 1900s. The doll was given to a boy named Robert Eugene Otto by a servant who, legend says, practiced voodoo. The boy named the doll after himself, and soon the family heard him having two-sided conversations. Furniture was overturned, and the boy was often found with his room in disarray, always blaming Robert. The doll has been accused of causing car accidents, business failures, and immense bad luck for anyone who dares to disrespect it. The paranormal encounter is one of psychological warfare. Visitors to the Fort East Martello Museum, where Robert now resides, report their cameras malfunctioning as they try to take his picture. Many feel a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread or nausea. Some hear the faint sound of a child's giggle. But the most common report is that if you look at Robert without asking his permission to take his photo, you will be cursed with misfortune. The climactic story is a modern cautionary tale. A tourist, scoffing at the legend, took a picture of Robert without asking and loudly mocked him. As he left the museum, he tripped and broke his ankle. On his way to the hospital, the taxi he was in got into a minor collision. And when he finally returned home, he discovered his entire photo album from the trip had been digitally corrupted, except for the one, perfectly clear photo of Robert, whose expression seemed to have changed to a subtle, sinister smile. Robert the doll is not a ghost, he is a vessel for something ancient and malicious, a reminder that some toys are never just toys. 4. The Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp. A small, quaint town in central Florida founded in 1894 as a haven for psychics and mediums, a place where the veil between our world and the next is so thin, the dead are permanent residents. The history is one of intentional spiritual connection. The camp was established by George P. Colby, who was directed to the location by his spirit guide. For over a century, it has been a designated psychic capital of the world, where mediums live and work, helping people communicate with the other side. With so much energy focused on contact, it's no surprise the area is teeming with spirits. The paranormal encounter is constant and varied. Visitors report seeing full-bodied apparitions walking the streets at all hours, often mistaking them for the living until they vanish. The sound of disembodied voices and ethereal music is common. Many feel sudden cold spots and the sensation of being touched by unseen hands. The air itself feels charged, heavy with the weight of countless unseen observers. The climactic story comes from a skeptical visitor who stayed at the camp's historic hotel. He awoke in the middle of the night to see the translucent figure of an old woman sitting in the armchair in his room, knitting. She looked up, smiled at him, and said, "Don't worry, dear, I'll be done soon." She then faded away. The man, terrified, checked out immediately. The front desk clerk simply nodded and said, "Ah, you met Sarah. She likes that room." Cassadaga is a town built by the dead for the living, a place where you are never, ever alone. 5. The Devil's Chair, Cassadaga Cemetery. located just outside the Spiritualist camp, in the Pinewood Cemetery, sits a simple, brick-and-mortar chair, a grave marker that has become a dark nexus for occult activity and a doorway for something demonic. The history of the chair is mundane. It was a common practice in the late 1800s to build chairs at gravesites for visitors to sit and mourn. But this particular chair, due to its isolated location and the camp's psychic energy, has attracted a dark legend. It is said that if you sit in the chair at night, you can speak to the devil himself. The paranormal encounter is one of escalating dread. Visitors who approach the chair report their flashlights dying. The temperature drops dramatically. Many hear faint, whispering voices that seem to come from the ground beneath the chair. Some have reported seeing shadowy figures moving between the headstones, circling closer the longer they stay. The climactic story is a local rite of passage. A group of teenagers went to the chair at midnight on a dare. One boy sat down and, as a joke, left a cold, unopened can of beer on the seat as an offering. They left, laughing. The next morning, curious, they returned. The can was still there, but it was now warm to the touch, and it had been opened, the beer inside replaced with a dark, brackish liquid that smelled of sulfur and decay. The Devil's Chair is a testament to how a simple object can become a focus for dark energy, a waiting throne for a presence that is always listening. 6. The Maystringer House, Brooksville. A beautiful, 4-story Victorian mansion on a hill that houses a family of ghosts so active, so well known, they are considered permanent, if invisible, residents. The history is a saga of death and sorrow. Built in the 1850s, it was home to several families who endured immense tragedy. The first owner's wife died young in the house. A later owner, Frank Saxon, lost his wife and 3 of his 4 children to disease within the house. The grief from these losses has saturated the very wood and plaster. The paranormal encounter is diverse and personal. The spirit of a baby is heard crying in the nursery. The ghost of Frank Saxon's wife, Mabel, is often seen rocking in a chair. But the most prominent spirit is that of Jessie, a young girl who is playful but possessive. She is known to hold the hands of visitors and lead them through the house. People have had their hair braided by unseen hands and heard the sound of a music box playing from empty rooms. The climactic story was experienced by a tour guide. While closing up alone, she was in the basement when she heard the distinct sound of a little girl giggling from the top of the stairs. Then, a ball bounced down the steps, coming to rest at her feet. As she picked it up, the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut with tremendous force. She heard the giggling again, right behind the door, followed by the sound of the heavy bolt lock sliding shut, trapping her in the darkness for over an hour until help arrived. The Maystringer House isn't a museum of history, it is a lived-in home, and the family that lives there just happens to be dead. 7. The Fort Harrison Hotel, Clearwater. A grand, historic hotel that is now the spiritual headquarters of the Church of Scientology, a place where critics and former members whisper about a different kind of ghost, the ghost of its founder, L. Ron Hubbard, who is said to still walk the halls, overseeing his empire. The history is controversial and modern. Hubbard lived and worked in the hotel for years before his death in 1986. The church reveres him, and many believe his powerful personality was so attached to the building that his spirit could not leave. Rumors persist of strange rituals and an intense, watchful energy within. The paranormal encounter is one of being observed. Former staff have reported seeing the apparition of a tall man with white hair and a nautical uniform, Hubbard's preferred attire, standing on the mezzanine, looking down. The sound of a typewriter is heard from his old, sealed-off office. There is a pervasive feeling of being watched, of your thoughts not being entirely your own, a psychic pressure that many find unbearable. The climactic story comes from a journalist who was allowed a tour in the 1990s. He became separated from his group in a lower-level hallway. He saw a man matching Hubbard's description standing at the far end, who gestured for him to follow. The journalist felt an irresistible compulsion to obey. He was led to a nondescript door, which the figure then walked through. When the journalist opened the door, he found only a small, empty broom closet. The air inside was freezing cold, and he was overcome with a sudden, irrational fear that made him flee the building. The Fort Harrison Hotel is a monument to a man's towering ego, an energy so powerful that it may have cemented his soul to the foundation. 8. The Skunk Ape Headquarters, Ochapi. A quirky roadside attraction in the heart of the Everglades, dedicated to Florida's answer to Bigfoot. But the real horror isn't the legendary ape, it's the ancient, malevolent energy of the swamp itself that presses in from all sides. The history is one of modern legend building, but the swamp is ancient. The skunk ape is described as a large, bipedal, foul-smelling primate that stalks the misty marshes. While the existence of the creature is debated, the feeling of being hunted in the Everglades is not. The paranormal encounter here is primal. Visitors report hearing deep, guttural vocalizations and heavy footsteps in the mangroves just beyond the property line. The overwhelming stench of rotten eggs and decay, the skunk ape's calling card, often wafts through the air without explanation. But more than that, people feel an intense, lingering sense of being watched by something intelligent, something that does not belong. The climactic story was told by a campers. Deep in the Fakahatchee Strand, they awoke to the sound of something massive moving through the water around their island campsite. Their flashlights revealed nothing but swirling mist. Then, a large rock landed in the center of their camp with a sickening thud, thrown from the utter blackness. This was followed by a deep, roaring howl that seemed to come from every direction at once. They spent the rest of the night in terrified silence, their boat just feet away, but too afraid to move toward the water. The Skunk Ape Headquarters is the gateway to a primordial fear, a reminder that the Everglades hides things that were never meant to be seen. 9. The Tampa Theatre. A breathtakingly beautiful, historic movie palace from 1926, with a starry sky ceiling and ornate decor, where the spirit of its original projectionist, known as Foster, still lovingly tends to the films, both past and present. The history is one of dedication. Foster Fink Finley was the theatre's first projectionist, a man who loved his job and the building with all his heart. He worked there for decades until his death. Such was his attachment that he simply never left. The paranormal encounter is mostly benevolent, but undeniable. Staff arriving in the morning often find seats flipped down, as if an audience has just left. The scent of his favorite pipe tobacco lingers in the balcony. The mighty Wurlitzer organ sometimes plays a few phantom notes when the theater is empty. Most commonly, projectors will turn on or off by themselves, and films will be found threaded perfectly, even though the booth was locked. The climactic story is a favorite among ushers. One evening after a late show, a cleaner was vacuuming the main auditorium. He looked up at the projection booth and saw Foster's distinct silhouette clearly behind the glass, looking down at the empty seats. The cleaner waved, and Foster waved back. It wasn't until he was leaving that the cleaner remembered with a chill the projectionist that night was a young woman, and Foster had been dead for over 30 years. The Tampa Theatre is a place where a man's passion was so strong, it created a ghost of pure nostalgia, forever preserving the magic of the movies. 10. The Riddle House, West Palm Beach. A charming, yellow Victorian house that now sits in a cemetery, and is considered so violently haunted that the city officially declared it off-limits to all visitors after dark. The history is one of a wrongful death and a vengeful curse. The house was originally the gatekeeper's residence for a cemetery. A former employee, a man named Joseph, was allegedly wrongly accused of theft by the owner, Carl Riddle. In despair, Joseph hanged himself in the attic, vowing that no one would ever be happy in the house again. He has kept his promise. The paranormal encounter is intensely aggressive, especially in the attic. The spirit, known as the Gentleman, is a tall, shadowy entity that exudes pure hatred. Visitors report being scratched, choked, and shoved. The attic door slams shut with violent force. EMF meters spike to dangerous levels, and people are overcome with feelings of rage and suffocation the moment they approach the stairs. The climactic story is what led to the ban. A paranormal investigator, a large and skeptical man, dared the spirit to show itself. He was immediately lifted off his feet and thrown down the attic stairs by an unseen force, breaking his collarbone. As he lay at the bottom, the attic door slowly creaked open, and the distinct shadow of a hanging body, slowly twisting, was cast down the staircase by a light with no source. The Riddle House is not just haunted, it is cursed, a monument to one man's vengeance that has become a prison of pure malevolence. 11. The Don CeSar Hotel, St. Pete Beach. The Pink Palace, a stunning, pink luxury resort on the Gulf Coast, where the ghost of its original owner, Thomas Rowe, still wanders the halls, forever searching for his lost love. The history is a romantic tragedy. In the 1920s, Rowe built the hotel and fell in love with a beautiful Spanish opera singer named Lucinda. Her family disapproved and whisked her away back to Europe. Rowe, heartbroken, was said to have died of a broken heart in the hotel he built for her. The paranormal encounter is one of poignant romance. Rowe's spirit, a dapper man in a 1920s suit, is often seen in the lobby, on the stairs, or looking out toward the water, waiting for a ship that will never bring Lucinda home. The scent of his rose cologne appears in empty elevators. The sound of a woman's operatic singing is sometimes heard floating from the upper floors. The climactic story is told to newlyweds. A couple staying in the honeymoon suite awoke to see the apparition of Thomas Rowe standing at the foot of their bed. He wasn't looking at them, but through the window at the moonlit beach. He sighed, said a single, clear word, Lucinda, and then turned, tipped his hat to the stunned couple, and walked directly through the closed door. The Don CeSar is a castle of sorrow, where the ghost of a lovesick man proves that some hearts never stop breaking, even after death. And now, the #1 most haunted place in Florida. 12. The USS Massachusetts, Pensacola. A battleship that saw action in both World Wars, now a museum at the Pensacola Naval Air Station, where the ghosts of sailors who died in training accidents and battle are still standing their watch, trapped within the steel walls of their floating tomb. The history is one of service and sacrifice. The USS Massachusetts, BB-59, was a formidable warship. While she survived battles with minimal casualties, men did die aboard from accidents, illness, and the perils of life at sea. The intense, confined energy of battle and sudden death has left a permanent scar on the ship's atmosphere. The paranormal encounter is claustrophobic and authentic. Visitors report the sound of phantom voices shouting orders over the ship's intercom. The smell of cordite and cooking grease appears and vanishes. Full-bodied apparitions of sailors in period uniforms are seen manning battle stations, walking through solid bulkheads, and saluting officers who aren't there. The sound of running footsteps on the deck above is constant, even when the ship is closed to the public. The climactic story comes from a security guard doing his nightly rounds. He was in the lower engine room when he heard the distinct sound of a wrench clattering to the deck. He turned his flashlight to see a translucent sailor in soot-stained coveralls, frantically trying to turn a valve that had been sealed shut for decades. The sailor looked at the guard, his face a mask of panic, and yelled, "We're taking on water. Don't just stand there, help me," before fading into the humming machinery. The USS Massachusetts is a sentient piece of history, a warship where the crew is forever battling, forever repairing, forever sailing on the haunted seas of eternity. You have now sailed on a ghostly battleship, braved a cursed attic, and walked the halls of hotels where love and loss are eternal. You have seen that Florida's beauty is only skin deep, and its swamps and cities hide secrets that can never truly be buried. So we have to ask you, after hearing these 12 tales of swamp ghosts and hotel phantoms, would you dare to spend a night alone in the Riddle House attic? Or would you take a moonlit kayak into the Everglades, listening for the call of the skunk ape? Let us know in the comments which of these Florida locations chilled you to your core. If these stories made you second-guess your next beach vacation, help us out. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend who loves a good, sun-soaked scare. And to ensure you join us for our next journey into the unknown, subscribe to Ghostly Tales and ring that notification bell. Because no matter where you are, the shadows are never far away. Until next time, sleep well, if you can.